Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Hudak.
They can still pick up a first down without reaching the end zone. The throw goes to the end zone. Juwan Johnson, touchdown, his fifth in the last 5 games.
All he does is catch touchdowns. How about Juwan Johnson? Playing great with the opportunity afforded him. Love when we get a chance to visit with Maddy Hudak. She's on Twitter at Maddy Hudak _94. Do a little Saints film review. Maddy, we appreciate you. How are you?
I'm good. I was officially shamed into getting a new pair of AirPods after our last conversation, so hopefully no random beeping on this call.
Muse, what was the beep for those that missed it? When Maddy was with us last time, there was just random like beep, like it was obviously, I thought, was it call waiting or something? No, it was just her face.
Oh, I could do it.
Did we get a beep count last time?
Yeah, it was, if memory serves me correct, it was 13.
13 beeps. Yeah, it was 13. I thought it was more than that, but 13 beeps was, I guess, sufficient. Hey, Maddy, let's start with Juwan Johnson, since that's the clip we just played there. How has he been able to be so effective in carving out this role?
I think his acceleration is really what sticks out. It looks like he's one of the highest in his position group in that acceleration when he declares on his route. And he's really good off the line of scrimmage of looking like he's about to run like a post or something up the seam, and then declares his cuts a little late and just did a really good job of that in that game. His touchdown in the end zone kind of reminded me of the Jeremy Shockey type plays back in the day, where it's a very simple assignment, just get into the end zone, turn around, and sit down with the football. And he has that physicality to be able to kind of do that. I had seen somewhere where he said he's kind of running Mike Thomas's routes and has been watching a lot of film trying to emulate him. And that shows, I think, in the way that he kind of has made those contested catches. There was one on cover 3 where, the weakness there is up the seams, right in between the two middle of the field safeties. And it looks like he was going to go deep up that seam, and they loaded that side with receivers to kind of confuse them. And he just did a really good job of turning around, making that cut, and having good hands, because we've also seen a lot of drops this season when guys have been in position to make catches. So for him to be able to kind of declare routes late, make himself a target by getting separation and then making the catches, his switch from wide receiver to tight end was really smart to me.
Are you seeing him more as a tight end than a receiver in the role he's had here in the last month?
Yeah, I think especially in the red zone target, I think it's kind of what the vision was supposed to be for Jared Cook, and he just did not have the hands to do any of what they were asking. I just think that his size and his physicality favors that role a bit more, especially when they're kind of lacking in that room.
Maddy Hudak's with us. She's on Twitter at Maddy Hudak _94. The other guy who obviously had a monster day on Sunday was Taysom Hill. So, okay, Maddy, like, it's very obvious, and I went through the numbers earlier. When Taysom Hill is really involved, they win. When he's not, they don't. So what was different yesterday that allowed Taysom to have the success he did?
It's just such a funny tale to me, the whole Taysom Hill story from start to finish. I did see some stat where the Saints are 3-0 and he has 9 or more carries, but it looks like they allowed him a little more decision-making in this game, and it wasn't so much he's coming in for a quarterback power and there's no reading of the coverage. So getting him into more of those play-action roles, you could see him working off Kamara and reading the coverage, seeing when the defensive end was crashing down and deciding to hand it off so Kamara could run off the middle. But he and Kamara just oddly have a very complementary skill set in terms of power rushes out the middle, but that speed to get around the perimeter and have those outside zone runs. So it almost felt like more of a 2-quarterback system you see in college, because they also had throwing quite a bit in that game, and the throws weren't that great, but once one stuck, now you have to kind of respect the passing game from Taysom Hill enough to not totally stack the box. So I just think the unpredictability and really leaning into that for once and not kind of putting him in just to snap the ball and take off right down the middle and giving him some creativity there and allowing him to try to get some passes off, especially not in play action type situations. He did drop back on some of those. I just think he's that X factor that this wouldn't be something I would suggest if they had a franchise quarterback back there, but with what they have going on right now, he really is a weapon in both now the passing, the running game, and just the offense getting it all going with good blocking up front as well.
Andy Dalton obviously also had a very efficient day. And Maddy, this has been the sort of conflicting thing, right? There have been times this year where he looks really good. He looked good against the Raiders. He looked good against the Seahawks. And there's been times where he looks objectively very bad to where people are calling for his job. Do you see, and like, first of all, so what did you see against the Rams? But also, is there anything that leads us to believe that there's that he can develop consistency there again?
There's been a couple of games this season where he's been starting where he just gets the ball out quick. His release is very quick, and especially in this type of game with Bobby Wagner and Aaron Donald lining up all over the place against three backup O-linemen. That touchdown pass to Olave where he was getting a hit and still managed to get that off, that really shocked me from the press box. I just frankly didn't think Dalton had it in him. So that kind of showed a lot to me. But I just think his quick trigger and just really working well with an offensive line that he probably had little familiarity with at this point because he's been the starter for a few weeks now, so he's been working with the ones. I don't think that he, again, is a long-term answer, and there are times where you see him holding on to the ball for too long and taking the sacks when he shouldn't, but you've seen that with pretty much every quarterback back there since they've been trying to replace Drew Brees, and I just think his veteran savvy showed a lot when basically, we kind of joked that the game plan was to expect to get murdered and get the ball out, but they had to know that this is a game where they'd be under severe duress, and he again, just this kind of quick intermediate passing game. You call him dink and dunk, and I think that has a negative connotation, but that's exactly what the Saints need right now to sustain drives. Their first drive was like 6 minutes long, and that really stuck out because the amount of 3-and-outs they've had this season have been what's really did them in.
Maddy, let's flip the field, talk a little bit about the defense in the day that they had, which was also very good. Now, understand no Cooper Kupp, no Matthew Stafford. Let's start with Kaden Elliss. The stats are very obvious. 11 tackles, he had 1.5 sacks. He stuffed the stat sheet. But sometimes I'll say this, Maddy, like I use Bobby Richardson as the example. Remember when he came as an undrafted rookie free agent out of Indiana, and he ended up starting, and he made a lot of tackles, and he got cut the next year. And it was like, well, he didn't play great, but somebody's got to make the tackles. It looks like objectively Kaden Elliss isn't just stuffing the stat sheet. Like, he's become a really good player. What is it about Kaden Elliss' skill set that's allowing him to play at the level he is right now with Pete Werner out?
Sticks out to me is just his mental processing and play speed, because you see a lot of guys make the read and then they don't really know how to get around the edge and stuff the run, and just his reaction time when he sees a play. He actually has a solid group of pass rush moves, or he legitimately won using a swim move. He juked one of the pass rushers in the backfield at one point, and just his short area quickness and decisiveness at rushing towards the quarterback. Quan Alexander was good at getting into the backfield, but I always felt like once he got there was a little bit of a delayed reaction sometimes. I'm wondering if he should bat the ball away or just go for the sack. And, man, Kaden Elliss just goes for it on everything. But when you can affect all three phases of the game as a backup, he was in coverage, and they allowed some incompletions, but so was Pete Werner, and there were no yards after catch in any of those situations. He did break up, I believe, 2 passes, but the runs up the middle have been killing this team all season, and I would credit the pass rush as well. But Kaden Elliss made several stops where he just does a really good job of scraping through traffic and shooting towards a tackle and reading handoffs in the backfield, and again, just making the decision to go for it at all times. I think he's just really the definition of a next man up, and the fact that they played so much 4-2-5 coverage, only keeping 2 linebackers out there when that room is so thin, to me said a lot about how much they valued Kaden Ellis' abilities in blitzing, passing, and run situations.
Is he a starter in the NFL?
He certainly could be. I mean, he's not Pete Werner, he's not Demario Davis, but not everyone is. And I think a lot of teams, quite honestly, would be looking at Kaden Ellis and wishing they had him over some of their rooms. He certainly has a size.
Yeah, it's been impressive. I mean, I guess, Maddy, we've seen throughout the years a lot of guys who, in spot duty, play really well in a backup role, really good special teams guys. I mean, Craig Robertson comes to mind. Was an incredible special teams guy that when you had a linebacker go down, he would always be in the right spot, could make a lot of tackles, but when you were asking him to be your whatever, 3-down linebacker, be a starter, that just wasn't his role. Elliss looks like he fits. I mean, he looks the part out there, has these last few weeks. One more for you. I want to ask about defensive end as well. No Cam Jordan, no Marcus Davenport. How in the world did they make that work?
Again, I'll point a lot to Kaden Ellis, and I will say to your point that I wanted to point out his blitzing last year was something that stuck out to me too as a tandem with P.J. Williams. So you know that trait is definitely there. But Zuniga, I have really not seen much of him. His closing speed was super impressive, but talking about, setting the edge, Carl Granderson, to me, really had a great game. He just had such quick play speed. He was shedding his blocks and getting into the backfield. He forced 2 hurried throws that ended in incompletions, but it was also the interior. There were a lot of runs that they tried up the middle where David Onyemata, who I also don't think has had the strongest season necessarily, he shut all of those down. And so when you had those guys beating people on the edge, I think Contavious Street was involved a little bit as well. But just Carl Granderson's hustle there, forcing them to really move on the fly, especially when they kind of had to go back to their backup quarterback who had a little more mobility. He did a good job of chasing him down as well. I would also credit a lot of the defensive backs who I thought had a much better game of tackling in space, coming downhill, because there were some misses by the defensive line, but it just felt like all 3 phases of the game were in sync for once. And the pass rush only rushed 4 most of the time, and they've been trying 5, 6 at times to get stuff going. But when the Saints can get 4 pass rushes into the backfield, that's their brand of defense. And Shy Tuttle was involved in there as well. Again, it just felt like there was this new mentality of, this is the starting lineup now, so you better make it work. I think that's Cam Jordan's second game ever missed and first ever with an injury, because the other one was due to COVID. But Carl Granderson's been in that room for a long time, and I think his veteran experience and Stabby showed.
We will see if the Saints can carry it forward. A tough one next week in the Bay Area there in Santa Clara against the Niners. Maddy Hudak joining us. We always appreciate it. Follow Maddy on Twitter at MaddyHudak_94. Maddy, we appreciate it as always. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.